You know, when you see a massive cargo ship just slowly pulling into a port, or maybe a fleet of delivery trucks rolling out onto the highway at dawn, it is incredibly easy to think of the global supply chain as just that.
Right, the physical stuff.
Exactly. The trucks, the warehouses, the pallets of boxes. We focus entirely on the supply side of the equation.
Which makes sense. I mean, it's what we can actually see.
Yeah, but today we are flipping the script. Because if a company only focuses on supply and gets the demand side wrong, there are really only two outcomes.
Yeah.
They either drown in a massive ocean of unsold inventory, or they lose furious, empty-handed customers to their competitors.
It is the ultimate balancing act. I mean, the physical movement of goods is just the final visible result of a massive, largely invisible process happening behind the scenes.
And uncovering that invisible machinery is our mission for today's deep dive. We're pulling insights from the APICS Certified Supply Chain Professional, or CSCP, learning system.
Specifically, Module 1, Section C.
Right, demand management. We're going to explore how companies don't just sit back and cross their fingers, hoping you decide to buy something.
Definitely not.
They actively plan, communicate, influence, and manage your demand to keep their massive global supply chains running smoothly.
What's really fascinating here is that before a company can build a single product, before they can book space on a single cargo ship, they have to figure out how to balance what people actually want with what the company can actually make.
Right.
That is the core of demand management. At its simplest, it is making sure the promises your sales and marketing teams are making to the public match exactly what your factories can produce.
And doing it profitably, obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All while generating a profit.
So it's not just a marketing team making a wild guess and, throwing it over the wall to the factory floor.
Not at all. I mean, operating that way means the entire supply chain is flying blind. Demand management prevents that by building on 4 very distinct pillars.
Okay, what are the 4?
You've got planning demand, communicating demand, influencing demand, and managing or prioritizing demand.
Got it.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this synchronization ensures a company produces order winners rather than just order qualifiers.
Okay, let's pause on that because that distinction is so critical for people to grasp.
Oh, absolutely.
An order qualifier is just the bare minimum to get a customer to even look at you, right?
Yeah.
Like if you are selling a car, having 4 wheels and a steering wheel is an order qualifier.
Right.
Nobody is buying your car just because it has wheels. But an order winner is that specific synchronized feature.
Like an incredible hybrid engine.
Exactly. Or a massive touchscreen. Something that actively makes the customer choose you over the competition.
That is the perfect way to look at it. And you only build order winners consistently if your demand management is locked in.
Thinking about these 4 pillars, I realized it's basically like throwing a massive high-stakes dinner party.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Yeah. So demand management isn't just opening your front door and hoping people show up with an appetite. First, you have to write the menu and figure out the exact ingredients.
Which would be planning.
Right. Then you have to actually tell the kitchen staff what to cook and when to start prepping. That's communicating.
Naturally.
Now, let's say halfway through the night you realize you're running dangerously low on the expensive beef. You go out to the dining room and start raving to your guests about how incredible the chicken is tonight, actively hoping they order that instead.
Oh, I see. So that's influencing.
Exactly. And finally, when you only have 1 bottle of the really good vintage wine left, you hold it back and only pour it for your most important guests. That's managing and prioritizing.
You are actively shaping the reality of the dinner party, not just reacting to whatever the guests decide to do. I love that.
Thanks.
And if we look at that first pillar, planning demand, this is where you are writing that literal grocery list for the entire supply chain. The final output of this process is called the demand plan.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the demand plan is not just a statistical forecast cooked up by an algorithm in a dark room.
Yeah, not at all.
The sources are really clear on this. It's a formal request for products from the demand side of the business handed over to the supply side. And it has to be a consensus document.
Which is key.
Yeah. It dictates exactly how many products customers will buy, the specific unit sizes, the prices, and the timetable.
And its impact on the supply chain cannot be overstated. The demand plan aligns the entire organization through what's known as a 1-number system.
A 1-number system.
Right. Imagine a company where the sales team thinks they're going to sell 1 million units, but the factory is only budgeting to build 500,000.
Complete chaos.
Exactly. A 1-number system means everyone is working from the exact same sheet of music. Operations looks at that agreed-upon plan in terms of units so they can prepare factory capacity and logistics.
Makes sense.
Meanwhile, finance looks at that exact same plan in terms of dollars to project their expected revenue and manage cash flow.
I have to push back on a specific detail from the text here, though.
Okay.
A best practice for a demand plan is to have at least an 18-month planning horizon. An 18-month horizon.
Yeah, that surprises a lot of people.
Isn't predicting exactly what consumers want a year and a half from now basically just fortune telling? I mean, consumer tastes change overnight. A viral video can completely alter what people want to buy in a matter of days.
It sounds completely impossible, I agree. But this raises an important question about how physical supply chains actually function in the real world.
Okay, how so?
That 18-month horizon is critical because the physical world moves much slower than a viral video. Acquiring new factories, leasing specialized equipment, or getting executive approval for massive capital expenditures takes an enormous amount of lead time.
Oh, okay.
You simply cannot snap your fingers and build a new production line in 3 weeks.
So they have to guess, even if they know they might be wrong, just to get the concrete poured for the new factory.
They do, but it's not a rigid, unchangeable prophecy. It is updated on a rolling basis every single month through a massive corporate process called Sales and Operations Planning, or S&OP.
S&OP.
Got it. Yeah, so if you picture a corporate boardroom, this is where the heads of sales, marketing, operations, and finance all sit down together. They argue, they bring their latest data, but they do not leave that room until they have updated that 18-month view and agreed on that single number for the next month.
So you've got this perfect 18-month plan from the boardroom. But a plan is just a piece of paper if people don't share it. Which brings us to the second pillar.
Communicating demand.
Right. This incredibly detailed plan is entirely useless if the right people aren't talking to each other. In a global supply chain, secrets are fatal and delays are fatal.
Absolutely. The underlying principles of communicating demand are entirely focused on speed and structure. You have to communicate soon to minimize surprises. You structure your communications so they occur predictably, like those mandatory S&OP boardroom meetings. And you focus those communications to fit the specific audience.
It's amazing how basic human psychology can actually break a global supply chain here.
Oh, completely.
Think about a marketing person who is planning a massive surprise 50% off sales promotion, but they delay telling the warehouse about it because the exact effect on sales is hard to quantify and they want to be sure before they stick their neck out.
That happens all the time.
Or think about a salesperson who is having a terrible month. The numbers are awful, but they hide those bad numbers, delaying the communication because they are hoping, praying really, that a big client will sign a contract at the last minute and save the day.
Both of those scenarios are driven by completely understandable human fear, and both cause absolute disaster down the line.
Yeah.
When you delay communicating that bad news or that uncertain news, you trigger what is called the bullwhip effect.
Walk us through what that actually looks like. How does one salesperson hiding a bad month cause bullwhip?
Okay, let's trace an imaginary product. Say a blue sweater.
Maybe the blue sweater.
At a retail level, the salesperson sees a small 5% dip in sales for the blue sweater, but they hide it.
Just a tiny drop.
Exactly. But by the time they finally admit it, the regional distributor panics because they have too much stock, so they slash their orders to the wholesaler by 20%.
Whoa, from 5 to 20.
Right. The wholesaler sees this sudden 20% drop, panics even harder, and cuts their order to the factory by 50%.
So a tiny 5% dip at the store turns into a 50% drop at the factory.
Exactly. And now the factory fires workers and shuts down a production line. But then that big client finally signs the contract.
I don't know.
Yeah. Suddenly, demand for the blue sweater spikes at the retail store. The order goes all the way back up the chain, but the factory has no workers and no capacity to make them.
That is wild.
A small delay or fluctuation at the front end got magnified into massive, chaotic swings in production orders further up the chain.
To stop that from happening, these massive organizations create a very specific full-time role, the demand manager.
Yes, the communication focal point.
They sit right in the middle between the marketing and sales folks, the demand side, and the operations and manufacturing folks, the supply side.
They are the ones forcing the communication to happen.
But practically speaking, how are they sharing this data without drowning executives in spreadsheets?
They rely heavily on a properly structured demand plan dashboard. The goal here is to focus executive attention only on what matters.
Okay.
The dashboard will show historical data for the past few months and future projections for the next 18 months. But crucially, it highlights discrepancies in red. It is all about exception management.
Exception management.
Right. If actual sales are deviating from the plan, or if marketing just added an unapproved promotion, the dashboard flags those exceptions. Executives don't read 100 pages of data. They look at the dashboard, spot the red flags, and manage the exceptions.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when that dashboard flashes red? What if the demand plan gets communicated perfectly, but it turns out you have way too much factory capacity and simply not enough buyers?
Yeah.
You can't just accept defeat and let a multi-million-dollar factory sit idle, right?
Yeah.
This is where we hit the third pillar, influencing demand. You have to actively shape the customer's behavior.
This is where supply chain management intersects heavily with marketing. If you need to influence demand, you utilize the PDCA model. That stands for Plan, Do, Check, Action.
Wait, so if they launch a massive ad campaign to boost demand for that idle factory, they don't just wait until the end of the quarter to see if it worked.
Never. The entire point of PDCA is continuous, real-time course correction.
Wow.
You plan the promotion, you do it by launching it, but then you constantly check the daily metrics. If the demand isn't rising fast enough to fill that factory capacity, you take immediate action to tweak the campaign, lower the price, or change the messaging mid-flight.
And the tools they use to actually do the influencing are the classic 4 Ps of marketing, often referred to in the industry as demand shaping: product, price, place, and promotion.
Exactly.
Let's look at product first. Maybe a company designs a highly engineered meat substitute specifically to target a customer segment that wants health benefits but refuses to compromise on taste. You are literally engineering a physical product to pull a very specific lever of consumer demand.
Then you have price. And this isn't just about throwing a 10% discount on a t-shirt. Think about the service industry.
Yeah, if you've ever wondered why your credit card company suddenly waived your annual fee, it wasn't out of the kindness of their hearts.
No, definitely not.
They will often waive fees for highly desirable customers who carry a balance from month to month, because the interest on that balance is where the company makes its real money. They are dropping the price of the fee to influence your demand to keep their card in your wallet.
And for promotion, we can look at how heavily the branding and naming of a product shapes demand. A truck named the Dodge Ram implies toughness, power, and durability.
Right.
That name alone shapes the demand of a specific demographic looking for a work vehicle. Meanwhile, the Honda Civic implies sensible, economical, reliable city driving. The name itself is a psychological tool to generate specific demand.
And finally, place. It's not just about what physical retail shelf the product sits on at the grocery store anymore. It's about contact channels.
Oh, yes.
It's about the ease of downloading digital software directly to your laptop or utilizing interactive e-commerce sites to capture your demand wherever you happen to be scrolling on your phone.
All of those are designed to increase demand. But here's the brilliant part. Influencing demand isn't always about making people buy more. Sometimes you have the exact opposite problem.
Right. You have too much demand in a constrained supply chain. Your warehouses are empty and your trucks are full. So influencing demand becomes about convincing the customer to buy differently. You actively manipulate their buying habits to relieve pressure on your own systems. For example, a company might offer a customer a discount on their order if they're willing to accept a much longer shipping lead time.
Which happens a lot during the holidays.
Exactly. You are literally paying the customer to slow down so your supply chain can catch its breath.
You are tailoring the demand to fit your available capacity. But none of these strategies, the 18-month plan, the dashboards, the 4 Ps, none of them are static.
What do you mean?
The way you plan, communicate, and influence demand completely shifts depending on how old the product is. You do not manage demand for a brand new cutting-edge smartphone the same way you manage demand for a dying, outdated VCR.
Which takes us right into the concept of product lifecycle stages and PLM, product lifecycle management. A product's life is broken down into 4 distinct stages.
Right. First is introduction.
Sales are low, and you're actually taking negative profits because your marketing costs are so incredibly high just to build awareness.
Then comes growth.
Revenue is skyrocketing, and the supply chain is sweating just trying to build enough capacity to keep up with the hype.
Then maturity.
Sales have peaked. It's highly profitable, but competition is fierce, so your products have to be incredibly dependable.
And finally,
Decline.
the market is saturated. tastes change. A new technology replaces it.
How the manufacturing strategy has to fundamentally shift as the product moves through those stages is really key. In the growth and maturity stages, you are likely using a make-to-stock strategy.
Make to stock is basically like buying toilet paper. The factory builds millions of rolls before you ever walk into the store because the demand is so predictable. They know it will sell, so they just stock the shelf.
Correct. But in the decline stage, as demand dries up and becomes unpredictable, you have to transition to a make-to-order strategy.
Which is like ordering a custom wedding dress. You don't build it until the specific order with the specific measurements is firmly in hand.
Otherwise, you end up with that massive ocean of unsold, outdated inventory we talked about at the very beginning of the deep dive.
And the pace at which a product moves through those 4 stages of life is called its clock speed.
I really wanted to dig into clock speed. How does a fast or slow clock speed fundamentally change the design of the entire supply chain?
Well, think about an innovative product with a very fast clock speed, like a new smartphone. The life cycle is incredibly short, maybe a year before the next model comes out, and the demand is highly unstable.
Right.
For that product, your supply chain must prioritize responsiveness over cost. You need highly modular designs, excess factory capacity, and a pull manufacturing system where you only do the final assembly once you see what the market actually wants.
Because if you guess wrong and build 1 million green phones, but the internet decides everyone wants blue, your product will be totally obsolete and worthless before you can even get them on a discount rack.
Precisely. Now, contrast that with a functional product with a very slow clock speed. Think of a bag of fertilizer or a box of nails. The demand is incredibly stable. The product isn't going to magically become obsolete next month. For that product, your supply chain must prioritize efficiency and low cost above all else.
So that's the make-to-stock approach.
Exactly. The make-to-stock push manufacturing system. You just run the factory as cheaply and efficiently as possible, build up the inventory, and push it out to the hardware stores.
To manage all of these shifting strategies, companies use PLM software, product lifecycle management. It handles everything from the initial spark of new product introduction all the way to the end of the product's life.
It's massive.
And one of the most fascinating aspects of PLM from the text is how it ensures traceability. It tracks individual units by their lot or serial number all the way through the shipping network and directly into the customer's hands.
Traceability is vital for the modern supply chain. I mean, if there is a software upgrade needed or a critical safety recall, the company knows exactly where that specific item is in the world. And at the end of life stage, PLM manages the reverse logistics. That is the process of getting the physical product back from the consumer to properly recycle it or to recover rare, expensive, or hazardous materials from the internal components.
We have covered some serious ground today. Let's do a quick summary of the journey.
Sounds good.
We've seen how these massive companies don't just react to us. They build these rolling 18-month demand plans, intense boardroom meetings to predict our behavior.
Yep.
They hire full-time demand managers to force their own salespeople and marketing teams to share data, preventing those hidden secrets that cause the dreaded bullwhip effect.
Right.
We looked at how they use the 4 Ps, like dropping your credit card fee or naming a truck the Dodge Ram, to actively shape our buying habits. And finally, how they use PLM software to track a product from its birth through its rapid or slow clock speed, all the way to its recycling bin.
It really is an incredible system.
So the next time you are browsing online and you see a perfectly timed discount or an ad for a product that feels incredibly specific to you, or you get an offer for a cheaper price if you just wait a few extra days for delivery, realize that you are not just seeing an ad. You are seeing the invisible machinery of demand management in action.
It's a completely different way to view your everyday purchases. But I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder, something that builds on this idea of shaping behavior.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've talked extensively about how companies work so hard and spend so much money to influence our demand. But as artificial intelligence and predictive algorithms become exponentially more powerful, they are getting better and better at predicting our individual hyper-specific behaviors.
Oh, wow.
So will the entire concept of influencing demand eventually disappear? If the algorithms know exactly what we want and exactly when we need it, before we even consciously realize it ourselves, does demand management just fade away and simply become automated fulfillment?
Wow, that is a wild thought. Are we being managed or are we just being anticipated? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the invisible systems all around you, because the next time you see a fleet of delivery trucks rolling down the highway,
Remember, you're only seeing half the story. The supply is just the symptom. The demand is the cure. Catch you next time.